Not many can have missed that the reigning world chess champion Anand mainly used the Slav defense as his opening of choice against the challenger Gelfand's d4 in the World Chess Championship. It's often said that black is at a disadvantage at the start of the game because black's always a move behind compared to white. So in this type of matches where you play multiple games against the same opponent, the players often adapt the strategy to draw the games they play as black and try to win while playing white. In this aspect, the Slav defense worked out quite well for Anand. It only failed him once in round 7.
The variation Anand settled for differs a bit from what we have analyzed in our previous episodes of the opening school, and the differences occurs after white's fourth move e3, which is followed by black's e6 and gives us the semi-Slav defense. The maybe biggest difference after white's a3 is that instead of the development of the other knight, which brings us to a position we have analyzed previously, it stops black from exchanging on c4, since it, instead of putting white's position to the test, only would allow white to develop his bishop effectively.
Before we continue to the next move, I want to pay attention to the fact that black is unable to play bishop to f5 in this position. That's because white has chosen to develop his knight to c3 before playing knight to f3.
Exactly. The effect of this being that white gets extra pressure on the d5 pawn, which can be used after an exchange on d5 followed by queen to b3. Not even black's queen to b6 will save the pawn after knight takes on d5, queen takes on b3, knight takes on f6 check, e takes on f6, and a takes on b3. Let's return to black's e6. This is the most common choice, and it's almost always followed by white's knight to f3. Usually black decides for knight b to d7 in this position, but Anand did instead choose to play the less common but still acceptable a6.
This move means that black indirectly puts pressure on the queen side by opening up for future threats such as b5. The challenger Gelfand chose to play b3 here in order to stabilize his own position. In the 7th game, the one where Gelfand won, he actually played c5 here, and maybe that surprised Anand, because b3 is the more common answer. For the purpose of this episode, we'll concentrate on b3 as the continuation here.
The move leaves an obvious weakness in the white position, namely the knight on c3, and black should use this opportunity to put pressure on the knight by playing bishop to b4. The more natural looking bishop to b2 instead of bishop to d2 is not recommended, this since it doesn't block the pin and allows black to play knight to e4. It can seem harmless. White can protect his knight by playing rook to c1, for example, but the trick is that black puts pressure on the knight, but that isn't the final goal. Instead, we see after black's queen to a5 and white's queen to c2 that black can capture the pawn on a2 with his queen.
It's an interesting maneuver, and it can come as a real shock. You concentrate on the c knight and you relax when you see that you still have the upper hand after black's resources are wasted, and suddenly you notice that you had it all wrong the entire time. The plan was never to capture the knight, but in fact to win a pawn. Another thing about this position is that white's not able to win the black queen, because after a move like rook to a1, black only has to capture on c3 with a check, and after white recaptures with his bishop, black can capture the white queen on c2. To say the least, this is a very risky variation with many hidden traps, and every move hides a new surprise, and you should be extra careful with your moves. Before we end this week's episode of The Opening School, I'd like to leave you with a recommendation. Visit moscow2012.fide.com and play through Anand and Gelfand's games. It's an easy way to widen your understanding of the Slav defense. But with that, we end this week's episode of The Opening School.